Guys, my name's Casey Cobb. I'm from Project Ricochet and Pushpin Planner. Does everything sound okay? Okay. So I put up this blog post because it kind of encapsulates a lot of ideas about entrepreneurship, software development, a lot of the things that I think we need to get really good at mastering. And this blog post was ridiculously long. I mean, it was way too long. I'm surprised anybody read it. But we got more traffic to this blog post in 2 days than we got to our website in all of 2012. I mean, it was ridiculous. So this is what we're going to talk about today is kind of an encapsulation of some of these ideas. But if you get a chance, I'd encourage you to at least take a look, because I feel like I've been able to encapsulate a lot of the lessons I've learned from some of my failures and a lot of the successes that I've been able to put together. So the title of this is something along the lines of like how to launch a web app. And I don't know about all of you guys, but I'm pretty sure that most of us have some project, some pet project that we're really excited about and we'd really like to push forward. But we get stuck with these things the day-to-day. It's like, how are we going to pay the bills, right? I mean, I'd like to see just a show of hands. How many of you guys are with a firm versus how many are with like as an individual, kind of one-man shop? So the firm people, how many people are with the company? And then how many people are like a one-man shop who's trying to like push your stuff forward? And how many of you guys, either personally or professionally, have some sort of like, you know, project or some idea that you're trying to push forward and launch in addition to all the other chaos that you've got going on? Even if you haven't done it yet, most of us have something that we're excited about, because if you think about the nature of creative work and what we do, we are artists. We have the creative pattern. We are trying to create stuff. And whether that be a sculpture or that be a piece of software, this is the game that we're playing. And you know, the idea here is that it's like a video game, right? Like we're going through Super Mario Brothers and we're trying to like jump over stuff, trying not to get eaten by things. And the goal is at the end of the game, you know, whatever we are trying to achieve, we've achieved. That's the hope. So whether that be to make $1 billion or to solve world hunger or whatever that is. The interesting thing about this is that we do this, right? We make software. So this should be easy, right? You want to make an app? You want to make a company? I mean, we've got all the people. We've got creative people. We've got artists. We've got software developers. We've got designers. We've got UX guys. We've got SEO guys. We've got everything we need, right? So it should be really easy. You come up with an idea, and it becomes a success, right? But it invariably doesn't happen. Why is it so hard is the curious thing that I'd like to explore. And the obstacles that we've encountered with what we've been doing is, I think it kind of boils down to two main sections of problems. So we have resource problems and we have people problems. And if you think about the resource problems, the things that, you know, I stay up at night, or I stayed up at night thinking about before we launched this particular web app, which I'm going to show you a screenshot, but it's called Pushpin Planner. It's helped us not only explicitly lay stuff out for our own team, but it's also helped us kind of get this whole process down, is balancing billable and unbillable work. So this is the big challenge here. You can make money off your time. You can sell an hour. You can make a profit off that. You can either take all that at the end of the year, or you can reinvest it into new stuff. And the question becomes, what is the right tension? Because at a certain point, your billable work can very easily gobble up your entire bit of mental space, and you have nothing left for doing your creative work, the things that you're really passionate about. And where will the money come from, right? Like we have to pay people to do this stuff. If we don't have the mental space or the capacity to do it, you have to pay somebody to do it. And where's that going to come from? Do you need to get investment? Do you need to, you know, work more hours? You know, how are we going to do that? So the other category are people problems. And this is probably one of the most profound problems that's really under discussed in technology today. I hear a lot of people talking about the technical solutions, but we're usually the problem in making successes. It's a constraint on our ability to do something. How many people have been in the room with a client who wanted to do his own design? And he's like, I can do this. You know, like, I got a guy. And you're like, oh, the guy. He's a logo guy. He'll come up with a logo. And you're like, oh man, okay, let's see what your guy can come up with. And he sends the logo, and it's like, this is horrible, right? This is the most horrible thing. And we can't, he really wants to use it. He's really excited to use it. You've got to have that difficult discussion with him. The moment you see your clients start putting Comic Sans into their website, you have a WYSIWYG, but that is not a license to use Comic Sans. There's no excuse for that. You can't do it, right? These are people problems that we have to address in terms of like recognizing what people are good at, letting them do what they're good at, putting constraints, being okay with this, and then letting them not be good at stuff, and then finding people to do that stuff. So we're going to dig into that in just a second. But the next thing, the most critical thing, I think, in my experience of doing anything, is the momentum. So when we have a project that we're billing for, we've got a project manager, right? We've got sprints. We've got milestones. We've got all these things that we have to be doing. Otherwise, we're going to get sued. So when you get to your personal space, though, we don't have that. It's just kind of like this rolling, gradual thing that you have this hope that it's going to happen. So making that a little bit more explicit to where we are actually like, we've got that structure of our billable work in our personal work as well, are the things that we're going to discuss here. So let's dig into each one of these one by one. So the resource problems. For me, one of the biggest solutions when we actually went into launching this particular app, we've got a lot of apps we're going to launch, but this is the first one, Pushpin Planner. I'm going to show you a screenshot in just a second. We ended up thinking of ourselves as a client. So we became our own client. We have Jira sprints. We have time. We have a budget. We have a discussion around what are the things to get put in. We have we pretty much, we're like the worst paying client ever because we don't pay ourselves anything, but we cost. So you have to balance that, because if you do that too much, you're not going to have any money to actually pay people to work for you. So, but applying that structure of, we've got a certain amount of money that we're generating every week or every month or whatever, and we're going to take that budget and we're going to decide what to do with it. Do we hire people? Do we put it towards our internal projects? How much of it do we do that? There's really not, it's not easy to do that. There's no software that we found that made it easy for us to do that. That's why we made a piece of software. But the next thing that I think is a solution to the resource problem is whenever you can kill two birds with one stone, this is incredibly valuable. So in our case, we did our app in Node because everybody in Drupal is trying to figure out how to do Node, right? Everybody in web development is trying to figure out how to do Node. We're just wandering around like trying to figure this out. So it's like, okay, well, if we launch an app and we fail, at least we've got this new skill set that we can do, right? So you're actually making an investment in your team, in your company's ability, or your individual kind of portfolio that you can sell those services. And in fact, what I talk about in this blog post is the particular Node framework that we use is called Meteor. We got work right after we became masters in that framework that paid for the investment of that application many times over right away, because there's such a demand in that space. And we now know stuff that a lot of people don't know. So you're the hot topic. And any time that you can leverage, learning something and then use that to expand your book is going to be a win. Next, you got to make sure your dollars add up. You have to allocate funds responsibly. One of the biggest challenges that we encountered is, it's like a fear. We didn't actually experience it, but we feared it. Is that if you have all your guys working on unbillable work, what's going to happen, right? At a certain point, if you have any savings, you're going to eat that up, and you're not going to have any money to pay anybody, and then that's going to be a downward spiral. So you need a tool that is going to let you look at your work on a regular basis, see how much profit you're generating, and then look at the cost. You're a client, you're the worst paying client ever, so you have a cost, but you have no revenue from that. It's a negative profit, essentially. And you have to make sure that adds up in whatever amount that you're comfortable with. If you're a one-man shop, if you're a one-man show, or one-woman show, you can do this too, right? I mean, you've got 30 hours to work on your billable work, and that should add up for the extra 10 hours, or depending on how many hours you work a week. that should pay for that work, and that dictates your budget, how many hours you can actually spend on that. You need to think of yourself with your billable rate as a guy who is charging himself. And this really helps to explicitly push your project forward in a regular, iterative basis. So we made the app to make the app. We made the app that helps us make the apps. And we didn't have the app at the time, but slowly we started getting it. And so it's like this weird kind of Leonardo DiCaprio Inception thing. But we ended up with it, and it works great. So we can use this now in future apps, and you can too. I just want to give you guys a quick kind of screenshot of what we ended up doing and give you kind of like an overview of some of the things that we think are really cool about this. And we'll get into why I think this sucks, and I'm really pissed off at it, and I'm really frustrated with it, and that's okay. So the idea here is that you can put your work into as many different lists as you want. You can make, in this case, we have an in progress, we have new leads, we have internal projects, and we can add as many project cards as we want. And we can say one of the big problems that we had with our work was that we have some project going on, we're putting this many hours into it, but are we actually satisfying our client's need? Are we giving them enough hours, right? So the idea here was that we could say, okay, this website or this project is going to take, we're going to make weekly sprints or weekly ranges is what we call them. We're going to say the client needs 25 hours every week on these weeks. Down here, you know, this is a new project in progress, and if it hits us, it's going to be 100 hours here. And then you can kind of see how everything's going to fall in. We can make our team. We can say that they're available however many hours a week. We can put in their billable rate. We can tie this to our time tracking software. We use Toggle, but some people use Harvest. And you can say, all right, I'm going to allocate Casey and Tim to these projects in this proportion. And I can see down at the bottom, based on what I'm billing this client for each person's time, that I'm generating, in this case, $6,000 in revenue, cost me $3,000. Therefore, I am, what's that? Somebody have a question? So therefore, the profit is $3,000. So now that means I have $3,000, right, to spend on my other projects, minus your overhead if you have an office or whatever. Over here, we have this internal project, or this unbillable project, essentially. So we put the billable rate at 0. We make 0 money off of this. And so at the end of the week, we look at $3,000 and we look at negative $1,000, and you hope that that doesn't add up to be that I'm going into the red every single week. And this is a really simple principle. It's just a big picture look at where we're spending our time. Now, we've got tens of cards in each of these columns that we're trying to manage. But at the end of the day, we can look that all of our clients were satisfied. All of our team is allocated, whether that be your 20% time or you've got unbillable time scheduled for them. Everybody's taken care of there. And at the end of the day, at the end of the week, we're not losing money. That allows us to say, yeah, okay, we actually have a little bit of a dip in a month. Rather than going and trying to crank in new leads, I'm going to actually allocate that time to our internal projects. We're still going to work on new leads, but that's not going to be our sole focus. So this tool has allowed us to actually do that in terms of working with our project management software and working with our time tracking software. But it makes it really explicit, and it makes it really easy. So, and if you want to check that out, pushpinplanner.com. And we've also got a booth if you want to come talk to me at any time. So the next aspect of this is resource problems. And I kind of hinted on this. This is actually the really big problem. Money is a problem, obviously, always. But the really big problem is ourselves. Because we're that dude that's making the horrible logo in something in our lives. And it's important to us to recognize when we're doing that, and we need to have somebody to say, dude, that logo sucks. Do not do that. You need to be doing what you're really good at. And this kind of breaks down into 2 components, in my experience. The first one is getting the right people. Now, traditionally, what are the right people? Who are the right people? Right people are the guys that know these technologies, right? He knows app development, so we're going to hire an app developer, or we're going to hire a designer. Well, there's that. That's kind of important. But more than anything, in any entrepreneurial endeavor, or any billable endeavor, or any business endeavor, you have a different set of skills that are really, really important. And when you find people who are unhappy in their jobs, it's usually because they're stuck doing stuff that doesn't suit their temperament. They're not happy with it because it's not what they like to do. So, my partner Ricochet, we understand explicitly our different personalities, and we don't try to make the other guy do stuff that he's not going to enjoy. and we kind of gravitate towards stuff that we do enjoy. And if neither of us wants to do it, and it's not appropriate for our team to do it, we hire somebody to do it. I mean, that's the bottom line, because I don't want to be stuck doing something that I don't enjoy. I'm not going to be effective. I'm not going to be good at it. And it's going to, most likely, I could find somebody to do it cheaper, so it's going to be really expensive as well, which is definitely not a win on any front. So we use this thing called DISC. Has anybody heard of DISC? I know Susie at Four Kitchens has heard of DISC. The general gist of DISC, I'll save you like, hours and hours of reading about it. You have 4 different types of people, and all combinations of these people. The first one, I'll give you the kind of the stereotypical example of each person that in this model, and then you can tell me, or you can think in your mind's eye of the person that is that person in your life, because there's going to be one. So the first one is the D. That's the military general. That's the guy that no nonsense, doesn't talk a lot. He's all about results. He wants to get stuff done. The next guy is the high I. He's the salesy guy. He knows a million people. He wants to solve problems through other people, right? Like you got a problem? Okay, I'll call this guy. I'll get it done. Don't worry about it. Never get this guy to look at a spreadsheet. He'll just glaze over with any details. But he's really social, really high energy. You're like kind of traditional marketing guy. The next guy is the C. This is the systematic guy. So he's very logical, quiet, introverted, very analytical. He's the architect. But he's not forceful. He's not going to impose his views on other people. He's happy with his order in his universe. And then you have the S, which is the empathizer. This is somebody who's kind of like the social glue. They know, they really care about people genuinely. They really want to help people. They're oftentimes the ones that are solving problems between people. And it's just a genuine need to help people. So that's what they enjoy. Then you have combinations of these people. And I know a large percentage of people at any tech conference are the creative pattern. The creative pattern is the high C and the high D. So the high military general and the high systematic guy. This is the logical thinker that's very forceful, and he will impose his order on you. He has no qualms about that. That's your typical IT guy. Then you have your high D, high I, your high military general, your high salesy guy. That was Worley today at the talk this morning. This guy's like all over the place. He's talking about all sorts of stuff, and he's really enjoying it. He's got a lot of energy. But I would be willing to bet that he doesn't like looking at spreadsheets. He's got guys for that. So there's all sorts of patterns. The high S, high C, that's your perfectionist pattern. That's somebody who is very systematic, and they also are very empathetic, and they're trying to help people. What ends up happening with these people is they end up in burnout mode because they're trying to create the perfect work product, and they're trying to please everybody. And these are all in extreme cases. They end up really kind of like hating their job because they're stuck with stuff that they enjoy, but they're kind of getting burned into the ground. So when you think about these tasks, there's a ton of patterns that you could find in this stuff. Don't try to get a systematic guy to do your sales calls, right? It just doesn't work. He hates it. Any intelligent person can do any of this stuff. But if you try to get them to do it for long periods of time, they're going to not be very effective at it, and they're going to quit, is the bottom line. So in our team, we try to find things. I mean, the programming stuff's really easy, right? Because creative guys like to code. So we can give them systematic coding work. But there's some endeavors that are a little bit more, some guys might want to stick with stuff that's a little bit more known. They like to do the same stuff over and over. Some guys want to always be doing new stuff. Some people want to have a mix of that. But in terms of like my partnership with my partner Steve at Ricochet, and I'm using this because we're talking about Pushpin Planner, and we're here kind of officially as Pushpin Planner, but this is my experience with both. When he and I are dividing our tasks, we think about what is going to be the best task for that individual person. Steve is a little higher, or he's probably a lot higher C than me. I'm a fairly good C. I'm fairly systematic, but he's way more systematic than me. I'm more salesy, more marketing than he is. So we both communicate through the D, through the dominant, the military general kind of way. We're very direct and very, very assertive with each other. So generally, you're going to find that people that get along best have at least one overlapping quality, because that's their way, that's their avenue for communication. And when you find people that just don't even speak the same language, that's when conflict usually arises. And if they have a tool to explicitly talk about their personalities and what they're bringing to the table, it becomes a lot easier to resolve conflict because they can say, oh yeah, you're this way, and this is the good stuff you do. I'm this way, this is the good stuff I do. I don't understand you, but you know what? I see the importance of it, so let's just get on with it and let's get stuff done. So this has been huge for everything in my life, and specifically with our team. It's been a really great tool. The other thing I'll just point out with Disk, and we can come back to this if you guys have questions, because I could talk about this for days, is the systematic people. They're oftentimes very skeptical, especially of tests like this, which I always think is kind of funny that I can predict that they'll be skeptical based on the test telling me that that they're systematic, which is kind of like an interesting thing, and they usually don't appreciate me pointing that out when they say, I have some qualms about this. It's like, of course you do, right? So the next thing is never lose momentum. This is the biggest problem, I think, with any entrepreneurial endeavor in the longevity of it. I feel like I'm saying everything is the biggest problem. But it's like a frantic, if you want to get your thing launched or pushed or going, it's a frantic, mad dash. It's like you're sprinting and you're out of breath. And even if you're rallying to get to that end goal, even if you think, even with that, you're just barely going to scrape in to the finish line. You're going to be on fumes at the end of that. And if you ever stop that, that's your kind of principle that you come back to. If you ever stop that frantic dash, you will not start it back up. It will be very, very hard to start it back up. It's going to be a lot of work, and it's going to be unpleasant. So what invariably ends up happening with these kinds of things is you kind of you stop the momentum, and then you get stuck with your billable work and the client crisis, and then you have a baby, and then you're doing all this stuff, and then it's like, oh yeah, what about that project? Oh yeah, I'll get to that. But you won't. That's the problem. You need to have consistent momentum. And in my own life, one example that I found, it was kind of crazy. I do 8.5 miles on my bike every single day. And I've tried 12 miles on my bike. I've tried 15 miles on my bike. What I found is that 8.5 miles takes me about 42 minutes consistently every single day. If I do any more than that in the way that I have to do in the bike path that's by my house, it just becomes unpleasant. I have to do like an hour and 12 minutes. That's just too long. I don't like riding my bike that long. It's just too much time to spend to that. And so I find myself not wanting to do it. I skip a couple days. And when you find yourself in either an entrepreneurial endeavor or anything that you want to be doing systematically, you do less so that you can do more. You make it pleasant or fun or not unpleasant. And if you can do that, you will do it forever. And I haven't, there's a bunch of books about the power of habit. I think there actually is a book, The Power of Habit. I haven't read it, but I know that it's this principle. It's that you just have to do something that is not unpleasant. And if you can consistently do that and make it to the point where you're enjoying it, it would be better to exercise 10 minutes a day at a very low level than trying to do an hour, because that's what people try to do. It's like, okay, I'm going to learn this thing, or I'm going to get in shape, or I'm going to master this technology, or we're going to launch this app. And you just try to do it all right now. It sucks, and you just don't do it. So you got to just do less to do more. And if you need to have more throughput, if you need to do more, you need to hire people, or you need to get people with equity, or whatever you got to do to get people into that. But that's kind of like that momentum principle. Coming down to getting stuff out the door, it's the 80-20 rule. How many people know Pareto's Law? Has anybody heard of Pareto's Law? Tim Ferriss is the big guy that kind of is talking about Pareto's Law. Everybody's heard of Tim Ferriss, right? The 4-hour work week? No? Okay, he's a little kooky, he's a little out there, but a lot of his principles we should be adapting into software. So the basic law, Pareto's Law, is that 80% of the stuff takes 20% of the time. So you can get 80% of the way there and 20% of the resources. You can finish 80% of the project with 20% of the budget. And that's really, we've been there, right? It's like, okay, the project's almost done. It's almost done. We just got to do a few final things. And that ends up ballooning into taking forever. So that's Pareto's Law at work. That's when it bites us. But it can actually help us a lot, because all we need to do, if you take into account the principles of the Lean Startup, has anybody read the Lean Startup here? This is the book you got to read. I don't recommend that many books, but this book, if you're in software, you have to read this book. It's absolutely imperative. It's the next book you got to read. The general gist of this is that you need to get your stuff out the door, however you can do it. You just need to get it out the door. It can be the biggest pile of garbage with as many bugs as you know, like you're embarrassed at this. And in fact, if you're not embarrassed by it, you're failing. Like your first minimum viable product should be the absolute minimum set of features to get your product out the door, and you should start getting feedback. Because in general, this is the tendency that we have if we're left to our own devices. You come up with this really great idea, right? And you're like, you ask a couple people and they say, that's a great idea. So you like launch into it and you do it. And then you don't tell anybody because you don't want anybody to know about this idea. They'll steal it, right? And then you like work on this thing tirelessly day and night, and you end up having dramatic success, and you launch it, you make $1 billion, right? And what I mentioned in this blog post that I talk about, at that point you retire and you solve these world problems like malaria, and you do the Bill Gates model. This is the beautiful narrative that the entrepreneur has. The reality is, if you do that, you will probably fail because you're going to come up with some kooky idea. We're technical people. We're entrepreneurs. The problem is that we don't think like a lot of people. So if you come up with the idea that's going to solve your problem, it's going to be a dumb idea. It's going to work for you. But when you want to have a problem that's going to scale, it's going to reach the mass market, you got to get feedback. So you have to tell everybody about your idea first off. Never worry about people stealing your idea because people got so much stuff going on. They're not going to worry about your idea. They'll probably think your idea is dumb anyway because it doesn't apply to them, even if it's a great idea. But what happens when you share your idea is you are starting to get feedback. People are telling you it's great. They're telling you it's bad. They're telling you what they would like to see in it. They're offering to help. We have a company called Park Circa, which allows people to do peer-to-peer shared parking. Everybody that hears this idea loves it. It's a really cool idea. You can like rent out your driveway, and you can say, I'm going to be gone for 2 hours, and you can park in my spot for $1 an hour or whatever, and people can look for parking in San Francisco or wherever, and they can say, oh yeah, here's a spot. I'll pull right in, pay, transaction's clean. Great idea. Everybody loves the idea. People actually volunteer to give us help with this idea for free. A guy built our Windows app for free. This is not in the Ricochet capacity, but the idea fails because people will not, what ends up happening is parking on the street and parking garages is cheaper than people are willing to pay to receive for the inconvenience of having their parking spot rented out, right? This is something that had we tested and asked a ton of people, would you list your spot? They would have said like, I don't know, maybe, Everybody wants this service. Everybody wants parking, right? But nobody wants to list their space. It would cost like $1,000 a month to pay this person to get them to list their space. And you're not going to generate $1,000 a month off of a parking spot. We would have solved this problem very early on. Now, at some point, it may actually take off. It may actually work. But right now, it's not the time. So by sharing this idea, we would have gotten really important feedback and not invested the resources in that. So the next thing is, actually, to that end, the 80-20 rule, coming back to that. If you think about your minimum viable product, you have a subset of features that are actually what you need to get your product out the door, ship it, get feedback. So come up with the absolute minimum of the thing that actually tells people about your idea. And we should be doing this with our clients as well. We shouldn't let them design like the perfect thing because they'll probably launch it and it'll probably fail. We should be focusing on the minimum viable product, which is really the only thing that they can afford, most likely, and test your assumptions. And by focusing on minimum viable product, it allows us to do three things. First thing, it keeps the budget down. Next thing is it lets us focus on what's really, really important. And the next thing is it gives us, this next point, a bucket for their ideas. You can always say to them, they come up with this kooky new feature, and you're like, I'll tell you what, let's focus on the MVP right now, and we'll put that in the bucket, put that in the Jira backlog or whatever you use, and we'll come back to it. We'll reprioritize everything. So if you think that it's important to do your crazy idea, we'll look at it and we'll estimate on it, and then we'll add it into the next phase. But the MVP is like if it's not a client project, if it's your own internal project, whatever you can do to get this thing out the door, to have people start using it, that's what you need to do. So deploy early, be embarrassed by it, fail early. If it's not working, close it down. Fail often, come up with a bunch of ideas, test these things out without mortgaging your house and stopping all your billable work so you can just focus on this one thing. And don't be afraid to share your idea because, like I said, most people have way too much going on to care about your idea. And ideas are cheap. It's all the execution after the fact that's the really difficult thing. So, with that said, the really big thing here is that the champion, right? In most things, I'm just looking at my time to make sure everything's good here. Most things fail because they don't have a champion. You need somebody who is going to push this idea forward. They wake up and they think about how to get this thing out the door. When we have billable work, we have a project manager, right? The client's paying us to have this project manager that just focuses on getting this thing done. We have deliverable expectations and milestones to our clients. When it's our internal work, whether that be a firm who's decided that they're going to launch apps on the side and they've got ideas for this app, or whether that be an individual who says, I want to push this thing out, if you don't have a champion, somebody who's going to dominate this thing and make sure that they're going to remove barriers and keep people motivated, it's just not going to work. The other thing that's difficult about having champions is that these guys or girls are entrepreneurs in their own right. So if you're not the champion and it's your idea, if you're at a firm and you're trying to launch your idea, you need to find somebody within your organization, or you need to hire them to champion that success. But these guys are like spinning up their own companies, right? Like, how do you find these guys? They've got a lot of options. So what I would expect, in Ricochet's case, I'm the champion for most of our entrepreneurial endeavors. I work a lot. I try to get all this stuff done, and it's really challenging. But I've got a vested interest. I've got ownership of this thing. But if you're trying to get people into your idea to get a vested interest, the challenge is going to be like, why are they going to work for you? Why aren't they launching their own idea? Or why aren't they doing this for Facebook or Instagram or Google or whatever? So you got to come up with some sort of an incentive system. It's probably not going to be profit, because to start, your app's not going to have very much profit. But you could have some revenue sharing model. Talk to your attorney to set something up, or give them a percentage ownership of that particular thing. Because if your goal is to get it funded, or to have it be a part of your company or whatever, it's its own legal entity, you can assign ownership to this thing. I don't know what the solution is for that, but you just figure something out, because you got to give people a vested interest. You have to have a champion, otherwise your product will not go anywhere after a certain point, after kind of like the fun stuff is over. When settling disputes, momentum trumps the best path. As technical people, we are all at risk of saying, it's not perfect yet though. It's not great. It's not the model of perfection. It's not what it should be. So I'm going to work a little bit more. I'm going to make it a little bit better. The perfectionist pattern. That doesn't work with trying to get an MVP out the door, because it stops momentum. It keeps progress from pushing forward. And if that happens, you just need to say, like, whatever makes it go fastest. An example with Pushpin is we would come up against technical hurdles. Like right before the MVP, we want to have this really cool JavaScript tutorial that shows people how to use this thing, because it's kind of complicated. It's a bunch of engineers that thought it up. So of course the UI is going to suck. So we made this JavaScript tutorial, and it started to be a lot more complicated than we thought it would be, because elements of the DOM are like appearing and disappearing, and they don't exist when you're trying to tie JavaScript triggers to them. So it was like, 2 days before we want to launch this thing, do we delay launch to get this thing right, or do we just push it out there and either hope people figure it out and come up with that JavaScript tutorial as soon as we can, or in the case of what we did, we just made a stupid video that just says, like, this is how you do it. And if you don't watch the video, you're going to have a little bit of difficulty navigating it. Some people do, some people don't. But ultimately, I would rather have the people coming in and using it and getting feedback, and then figure out how to improve that conversion rate than not doing anything, because you just got to push it out. You got to have that momentum. Also, the biggest problem that I have in design or development or our entire industry is listening to what people think is the best path. We all think a lot of things. Oftentimes, it has no basis on anything other than it's our opinion, And the more experienced you are, the more authoritative you are when you voice your opinion. But oftentimes, it comes down to opinion. And Google is famous for saying, like, they tested out like how many shades of blue or something for their Gmail. It was like 2,000 shades. They did A/B testing. That's a little extreme. But if you have people who are stating something and they have the potential for slowing momentum, well, then make a test. Use tools like Optimizely or Crazy Egg or Visual Web Optimizer or ClickTail or whatever you got to do. Just give people the ability to still say what they believe is right. And if it's like something that's going to hold everything up, if they think, I don't want to launch it because the logo doesn't look quite right, or I think this video should be here rather than here. It's like, okay, well, we'll just change the DOM after we launch in Optimizely, and we'll see who's right, and then we'll do that if it looks like that's actually going to convert better. And the last point here is metrics. We need metrics. We need metrics with everything. We had a discussion. We went to dinner with Four Kitchens last night, and we were talking about Fitbit. People love Fitbit, right? Does anybody here use Fitbit aside from, yeah, okay. So what do you like about it? What is the thing that is really fun? Does anybody want to throw something out? Personal metrics, right? There's a book. It's called The 3 Signs of a Miserable Job, and by Lencioni. He's done The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. He's got a whole series of books. But he talks about the 3 things that make a job really suck are, let me think back to it. First one is you're not being understood or appreciated as an individual. The next thing is you don't see how what you do really matters in the world. It seems meaningless. And the last thing, the sign of a miserable job, is you have no metric for what you're doing. This is true with jobs. This is true with work. We need metrics. We need to see, the company's revenue, or the amount of bugs, or how many sprint tickets or how many tickets we finished in the sprint, or whatever metrics we can come up with. If we have metrics, we will be happier. Fitbit is your personal exercise metrics thing. But for your application, you need metrics too. And you can do this in Google Analytics. You can set up goals so that it pushes an asynchronous call whenever somebody signs up, or whenever somebody does some certain thing, and you can check those things. You can check your traffic. That's the easiest thing to measure. But when you come up with a test, you need to be able to see if it's working. And the biggest test is who's signing up, who's buying, right? Those are big numbers. But you could, I don't know, has anybody here used Optimizely? I haven't used Visual Web Optimizer, but I've used Optimizely. Anybody? It's the coolest freaking thing. Has anybody used Visual Web Optimizer? So a couple guys. The thing is, if you haven't done this stuff, it feels like it's going to be a big thing. Like you're like, A/B testing, I don't know. But Optimizely, all you got to do is you put this little piece of JavaScript in your website, and then you go into your dashboard, and you say, this is the path that I want to trigger on, and it loads up the web page, and you literally drag stuff around and hide stuff. And you can embed JavaScript, you can change CSS, you can do anything you want on your website. And then you can make an experiment. You say, I want to make this variant. You can do that 1,000 times. And then you can say, if somebody clicks here, then that's a goal. If somebody clicks here, then that's a goal too. So whenever people do that, you can see for every variant how many people have clicked on these things. And you can measure your success. You have a metric. It's so easy. We should all be doing this on everything. Our personal websites, our projects, our client sites. It's an extra service we can be adding. And it gives us an avenue to say, well, we'll just test that before we actually launch resources into this thing. So anytime you can put metrics into your software or anything in your life, really, Fitbit, that's going to be a major, major win. And it's going to let you keep seeing momentum because you're going to want to keep seeing metrics. And some final thoughts. This is kind of like I don't know if I'm entirely comfortable with the reconciliation or the thing that I'm about to say, but we can discuss it if you guys have questions. I think it just needs dialogue. Peter Drucker. Has anybody heard of Peter Drucker? Anybody know who Peter Drucker was? He was one of the greatest management thinkers of our century. I mean, this guy has written like 50 books, and every one of them is like the biggest book in management. He like defined modern management. He said that if you try to do, the average person can do one thing, right? 2 things is like kind of ridiculous, and 3 is a circus act. Those were his words. So I guess it's a matter of like your viewpoint, right? If you're, I mean, each one of us does a million things every single day. We're managing all sorts of stuff. Our families, our email inboxes, our internal client projects. We're doing several at a time. We're trying to launch our own apps. We're trying to do all sorts of crazy stuff. So according to Peter Drucker's thing, we've got like circuses within circuses. It would be crazy. Maybe in 1950 or whatever, things were a little bit slower. But to that end, it used to be that you could not go faster than like running. How fast does a human being run? Like 7 miles an hour? That's the fastest somebody can, 10 miles an hour, or 15 or 20, whatever it is. Yet you can go from New York to Shanghai in like 12 hours, right? How did we do that? We used technology, and it allowed us to really expand our horizons and our abilities to do stuff. So I suspect that we can do the same thing with Peter Drucker's thing. We can start figuring out ways to compartmentalize our software or our initiatives, our entrepreneurial initiatives, to be able to do more. And we use collaborative work to allow the mental space, because really what we have is a mental space problem. One person can only fit so much in their brain and do it well. But when you use the distributed model, you can get a little bit of mental space from everybody. Everybody does it's like the Mechanical Turk of life. Everybody can push everything forward. But we need to find tools that allow us to do that. And our attempt at Pushpin was the first attempt to make that happen. But the big question here that I'm about to address is the concept of, if you want to make a $1 billion consulting firm, that's got to be your thing, right? That's your endeavor. You're trying to make $1 million consulting firm. That's going to consume every ounce of your being. And you have no space for anything else. You can't launch web apps if you want to be a giant consulting firm. However, if you change your approach and you look at it more as like a garden, like your consulting practice, your contracting, whatever you're doing, this is your garden that reaps rewards many times over. So you are growing money, essentially, in this little garden. You're harvesting your little money bell peppers and your money cucumbers, right? And then you're making a salad with your team, this entrepreneurial-like salad. I could take this analogy really far, but I'll save you guys. You're making money. That's putting it into your entrepreneurial venture. The thing that you don't want to do is say, I have this idea, we're just going to do that, and then we're going to hope it works. And then if it doesn't work, then we kind of got to go back and rebuild our consulting practice, because we kind of lost all those clients, and we lost momentum in that front, and we're not like reinvesting in new technologies and stuff. So if you look at it as the garden, where you're just like constantly kind of trimming stuff and taking the fruit of this garden, every input you put into that garden helps your app launching initiative, and everything you do in your app launching initiative adds to it's a new vegetable in your garden, right? So like you're adding new skills to it. You're an expert in new things because you've picked your apps in technologies that are going to be synergistic with your consulting practice. You never raised it to the ground. You actually, the whole point was to never make it bigger than a 4x8 planter. And that's your consulting. You're really good at what you do. You're specialized. But more importantly, at a certain point, you can't do any more stuff in your consulting practice. And your budget is allocated. So you don't need to spend that extra time pushing for leads, because you've got a budget for your internal apps, and your hope is that your apps are going to become their own products. Your apps are going to get funded. Also, what's been really great at Ricochet is that when our team does have downtime, we can put them on our internal initiatives. The problem with that is that if you're only doing your app initiatives at when you're in your downtime, that's kind of not a sustainable model, because at a certain point, like we said, it's going to be dangerous. And your projects are going to starve, and your champion's going to get pissed off because he's like, I need to push this thing forward, and you're not giving me the people to do this. So you have to confront those things. But if you look at your consulting as something that's going to be able to produce capital for your app initiatives, and you're doing this responsibly with sustainable practices, that is a model that can and does work. And if you look at probably a lot of the big guys that launched apps, like look at Pivotal, or look at Basecamp and 37 Signals. I think Altazian or Jira had a similar story. They started as a web shop. They grew an app, and then that app eventually got really big, and they said, okay, well, we want to do this app now. And they just kind of closed down their thing. I think Pivotal still does consulting. I'm not sure, but I don't know. These are just a couple ideas to think about. The really big thing that I think is really important to take away from this is that there's a lot of stuff that, as entrepreneurs, as business people, as leaders in our space, as guys that are learning stuff, there's a lot more than just technical that we need to start addressing. There's the people problem. And we should have, I believe, a lot more talks, a lot more discussion, a lot more seminars, a lot more, everything around how do you get people to move forward, because this isn't soft, fuzzy stuff. People are, the new technical. I mean, I think the trend of the future is the skill that we're going to need to know in the future is let me look at time here. 1 minute left before questions. The skill of the future is, if you look at the trends right now, we have more and more smaller things, and we have less monolithic systems. So you have a project management software that you like that's best in breed. You have a CRM that's best in breed. You have a resource planning that's best in breed. You have all these things that you're paying less money every single month for, but there are more things that you have to wrap your mind around. You have more emails. You have more ways to communicate, right? You have SMS, you have chat, you have Skype, you have 50 freaking messengers that you got to keep track of. You have all these things coming in, and they're all gobbling our mental space. And it makes it really hard to think about anything. So the skills that we are going to be in need of are people that can figure out how to take all this input and sort it into a systematic way, compartmentalize the tasks that they're working on, and allocate more mental space towards what they're working on, push all that other crap out of the way, just focus on that, and then let all the other stuff in. There are a couple tools and philosophies that have been really popular. You guys know Getting Things Done? David Allen's Getting Things Done? Everybody's heard of this, right? GTD. Like, that's a tool that lets us do that. Because basically you can say, I'm going to put all this stuff into this list, and I'm just going to kind of deal with it when I need to deal with it. And you can give full mental space to what you're working on at that time, that the freaking Skype icon isn't blinking too much or whatever. So the people that are going to be most successful are the folks that can navigate that landscape, who can figure out how to do more with more. And I think that's the stuff that we should be discussing. We should be figuring out how we can do more with less mental space, because it's only going to get worse, I think. And that's where I'll leave it. So you guys have any questions? Nothing? I'm almost embarrassed to say what I use because it's such a stupid name. I don't know why these guys picked this. I use Toodle-Doo. Stupid, right? But there's other ones like Remember the Milk. But I basically, the system that I've developed for doing stuff, this is all my personal and work stuff. All my work stuff I try to and look at all this stuff I've got going on here. I kind of broke everything up into, I forget who it was, like Covey or something. He has a grid of he says things are urgent and important. Maybe this is, well, I won't look for it. Stephen Covey says you have four things that everything falls into four categories: urgent and important, not urgent and important. Exactly. So what I did with GTD was I took that and applied that to my GTD. So all the things that I have to get done, my next actions, which is where David Allen stops, I actually say, okay, I'm going to divide everything. You see here, I have urgent and important, not urgent and important, and then I have subtasks, and then I have not urgent. Let's see, no, let's keep going. Not urgent and not important. Urgent and not important is like a phone ringing, right? It's really urgent, but who cares? I just let that go to voicemail, and I deal with it when I process my inbox. So I don't schedule those, obviously, because you really can't. But I take it one step further, even, because I found when I first got into web stuff that I used to plan my time, my week, by the week. I would say, this is the stuff I'm going to do in the week. This is when I was working for a company as brand manager, and eventually even as chief operating officer of a retail firm. I was like, okay, well, this is what I'm going to achieve in the week. And I would do that. I would make a list, and I would go down the week. I would schedule it in, and I would do my week. And then when I got into web, I was like, holy crap, this is stuff coming in all over the place, every minute, really. So I'm going to do it by day. I'm going to plan by day. And by the time I got to my next email processing, the next day, well, freaking stuff had blown up and been resolved, and clients were pissed off since just the last time I checked my email. So I was like, I can't even do that, right? I have to do it every hour? How is that possible? I can't process everything every hour, every minute. I certainly can't. I refuse to accept that everything that comes in right now is going to get my attention. I refuse that. So I don't know how to, the system that I made, I'll share with you, this is kind of embarrassing too, is I have sticky notes, not in the hoarder kind of person who's procrastinating all these sticky notes everywhere. What I do is I get a sticky note, I have a book of sticky notes, and whenever somebody sends me a text message or pings me on Skype, hey, something's down or something's not working, if it's really urgent and important, I will do it right then. Because if I deem that this is the most important thing to do, I will do it. But if it's not really that urgent, but it's important, I will make a sticky note and I'll stick it somewhere on my desk. And I'll have a sticky note with kind of all those things consolidated down. I've reviewed them. And throughout the day, I'm scanning this list of what I have to do. I have a friend who does this with just a piece of paper, and it's this really ridiculous thing with all these scribbles and lines and stuff. That's the problem that I found, is when I tried to do it on a piece of paper, it just didn't flow with the actual flow of doing stuff, because I've got all these windows open. First off, I can't do a software solution, so the paper, somebody comes and something now is more important, but I don't have any room at the top of the list because there's a bunch of crap there. So the sticky notes, I could actually take something and put it right here in front of my keyboard. I hate it. I hate having sticky notes on my desk. So I use my own OCD to get rid of sticky notes to get these things resolved. That's the only system I can find that works. People come up with software, it doesn't work because all your to-do list is buried behind all your things you got to be doing right now. So you can't get through your crap to get to your proactive state. You need something. I need something that's physical and I can't ignore it. At the end of the day, my goal is to have no sticky notes left. I don't know if what you guys do to navigate that, but if we let ourselves respond to things as they come in all the time, we will fail. Nothing will happen because we'll always be dealing with the stupidest stuff to the point that we're like, you guys have seen that movie Idiocracy, right? It's like, the theory is that the dumb people have been the ones that bred the most. So like you just had dumber and dumber people where like they were watering their plants with like Gatorade and all the plants died. So then they were like they were at the behest of like corporations for their food and all this stuff. Like that's what you become. You can never proactively plan anything anymore because people are dictating your mental space. You have nothing to proactively say. For instance, this client really sucks. I need to fire this client. They're actually costing me more than I'm billing them. When you take into account the longevity of my company, whether my company will be able to sustain my goals of launching apps and doing quality work to my other clients, I need to fire this guy. But if you're always responding to that person all the time, you'll never have the mental wherewithal to say, this sucks, I can't do this. You're just always responding to it. So this is kind of like a tangent, but that's the only way that I use to kind of like manage my tasks. But for software at Ricochet, we use Jira, which is an Altasian project. We use Basecamp for client-facing stuff because we don't want them to have to learn Jira. Does anybody use Jira here? It really sucks. Like the interface is so bad. It's so clear that an engineer designed this thing, right? But that's okay because engineers are the ones that are using it. But when you try to make a client master that, that's not going to work. So Basecamp's super simple. Our project manager uses Basecamp to communicate the stuff back and forth so we have a history and everybody can see it. What else do we use? We use Balsamiq. Does anybody do wireframes and mockups with Balsamiq? This is really cool. You can leverage a lot of ideas. You don't even have your idea like thought through yet, so you just make some sample wireframe, print it out, and show it to people. Say like, hey, what do you think of this? Make a bunch of sticky notes on the printout as you get feedback from people. I've done this with many people. I do it all the time. I come up with a bunch of crazy ideas, and I just say like, what do you think of this? This is what I'm thinking for interface. I'll hire a UI guy to do a good job, but this is just my first preliminary attempt. Balsamiq's really helpful. There's a couple other tools if I thought about what we actually use that I could, if you guys want to email me or something, I can help. But what's up, guys? Right there. Sure. No way. I think anybody who tries to make a big company selling hours, it's a fool's errand. That's like trying to like herd a million cats, and this is what you think you're gonna like. I mean, you can make good money at it, right? But I would much rather have fewer, more intimate connections with our clients. They trust us. We don't have to do the battle of like, the trying to convince them of stuff, which is really a function of trust, right? When people first engage you, they don't know you from anybody. They don't know if they can trust you. So they're going to be really uncomfortable with time and materials, which is really the fairest way to go about it. I hate fixed bid because somebody's going to get screwed, right? I mean, fixed bid, either you're going to bill the client way too much because you had to pad it, or you're going to get screwed because you thought that it was going to take this much and it actually took this much, and you got to make the client happy. So you end up at a loss at the end of it, and you just hate life because you're doing this stuff that really, you had no control over what they had in their brain at that time because they didn't want to pay for some proper discovery, right? Like, there's all sorts of stuff that happen with that. But when you have that trust with clients, whatever you tell them you worked, they know that you actually worked that, and they know that you're really competent. They know your team. They know your structure. I really like that garden. And I think that if we strive to do that, it really gives us a way to say, like, no, this thing doesn't fit in my garden. I'm either not going to accept that client, or they're not compatible with my team. We're going to be hating life if we accept this. So we can reject it. It now gives you the framework and the context to turn down people, which is really what you have to do if you want a free mental space for what you really want to do. Because otherwise, I felt like when we first started doing this, I was like a squirrel that's sticking nuts in my cheek, you know, and like you're worried about the downtime, right? So you're just sticking more nuts in your cheek, and then what ends up happening, right? Like you just got this massive set of cheeks, and you hate life because you're working like 80 hours a week, and you know, your wife hates you because you're not spending time with her, and you're depressed because you're not like doing anything creative. Like that's a really dangerous cycle to go down. So any way that you can create a framework to explicitly state your goals and have a context to ignore things that don't fit in line with that is going to be a major win. So you had a question back there too, right? Yeah, so he asked the name of the tool to test stuff. It's Optimizely. I'll just pull it up here. And I can actually, if we don't have any more questions, I can just, wow, I'll be on, I talk about this stuff forever. What else? Anybody else? Any more questions? What's up? So it's launched. Like, I mean, we launched it. We resolved the issues with it. I mean, here, I can show you right here. We did this in Node.js, so we were able to leverage a new technology as well. We use this to manage all of our internal projects. You know, like this intro video, I literally I did a Prezi thing, the same thing that I presented with, and then I ordered I didn't have time, or really this is an initiative for us that we have to be very careful about how much we invest in it, because ultimately we need to make sure that we're responsible with our own funds. We can only put so much resources into something, and I would rather resolve the major bugs and stuff than put a bunch of time into marketing and stuff. So I could have paid somebody $10,000 to make some video. No, man, I can order a $100 mic on Amazon, right? And I can in my office, it was too echoey, so I brought a blanket and I put it around me. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was so freaking duct tape. But I just played this Prezi presentation. I just dubbed over with ScreenFlow Pro, you know, a $70 piece of software. It doesn't sound that bad. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing because it's not truly super professional, but it works, and it gets the job done. And that's really what I think it is looking for the minimum viable product to get this thing out there. And Optimizely, it's a little hard with Meteor. We use this in a framework called Meteor.com, or that's at Meteor.com, called Meteor. We can't really use Optimizely for this because the DOM keeps changing all the time, and it's Meteor is hey, your DOM's not what it should be, so I'm going to change it back. So all your A/B testing kind of goes out the window. But we're going to talk about a talk at DrupalCamp about what a Drupal and Meteor love child might look like. And we're going to talk about how the things that we've learned from Meteor and this Node.js framework, the things that we know about Drupal and what we hate about Drupal, and what we love about Drupal, the things we hate about Meteor and we love about Meteor. If they were to learn from each other, how would that look? And we're also going to talk about, right now, at this very minute, one of my developers is tweaking this to be a Drupal site on the front page so that we can do Optimizely, and we're not making a CMS in Node. It'll be Drupal for all the stuff that Drupal does really well, and it'll be Pushpin for all the stuff that Pushpin does really well. This is all real time. It's all interactive. That's one of the really big advantages of this resource planner. My team, we all log in to our own browsers, and we can talk and move stuff around and see how it works. So you know, it's a pretty fun thing, but I want it to be its own thing. So the status of Pushpin is it's launched. We've got goals. We've got metrics. We've got you know, we get a few signups a day. And then yesterday we got I noticed we got 50 signups, and I was like, whoa, what the hell happened? Meteor, the framework, tweeted out that we had launched, and all these people went in to see it. So we're gauging the momentum, and we're fielding bugs from our customers. We're trying to resolve those. We made an API so that people can start interacting with this. And everything we've done has been a strategic investment. So now we know Node. Now we know how to launch apps. Now we know how to do Node APIs. Now we know how to do, I mean, there's 1,000 things I could come up with that we confronted and mastered with this. And we've already got plans for our next app that we're going to be launching in Meteor, and we're going to do the same model. But what I've determined is I cannot do anything unless I have a champion to let out that mental space. So, or to allocate that mental space out to. So our next app, I'll make sure that I have somebody lined up so that he or she can do what I'm doing with these things, or we can share the load or something. But if I try to do too much, we'll falter on all the other stuff we got to do. So we're out of time. Thank you guys very much. If you have any questions, I'll be at the booth, the Pushpin booth, or send me an email or whatever. Good luck, guys.